Welcome everyone to another fascinating deep dive into the world of rare and extraordinary coins, where something as small as a single cent can carry a story that shakes collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike. And today we're uncovering the unbelievable journey of the 1981 cent coin. A coin that in the most unimaginable way has been valued at an astounding $92 million because of its bizarre combination of errors, mistakes, and mysteries that make it one of the most valuable pieces of metal ever to pass through human hands. And as we take this journey together, you'll see why a coin that most people would overlook as pocket change has transformed into a legend of numismatics, a beacon for collectors across the globe, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest details can lead to the greatest fortunes. So buckle up, because this story is one of intrigue, history, technical detail, human error, and the thrill of the hunt that has turned ordinary into extraordinary in a way that defies belief. Because when we talk about the 1980 penny, we aren't just discussing a coin, we're uncovering layers of American minting history, manufacturing mishaps, overlooked production quirks, and the possibilities that align to create a piece so rare and so special that collectors are willing to pay nearly $100 million for it. Which brings us straight into the heart of why this particular penny is unlike any other. The year 1980 was pivotal in American coinage history, not because of a change in design or because of a new composition officially adopted, but because it was a time when the United States Mint was under immense pressure to keep up with increasing demand for small denomination coins, as inflation and economic changes had people using more coins in circulation than ever before. And when minting pressure combines with outdated equipment, human fatigue, and experimental procedures, the result can be chaos in production that slips through unnoticed, creating the exact conditions under which error coins thrive, and that's precisely what gave birth to the incredibly valuable 1981 cent piece. Unlike the ordinary copper-plated zinc pennies most people know today, 1980 was still a time when pennies were made with 95% copper, giving them not only a heavier and more solid feel but also leaving them vulnerable to unique striking errors that don't appear in later zinc coins. And collectors love copper-era mistakes because they are physically distinctive and immediately recognizable. And when you add in the fact that some planchets were left over from prior experimental runs, or mis-fed into the presses, the opportunities for anomalies increased dramatically, setting the stage for the errors that made this coin so remarkable. Among the most striking mistakes tied to the legendary 1980 penny are doubled dies, where the die that imprints the design was itself misaligned during production, leading to Lincoln's profile being shadowed, the inscriptions like Liberty, or In God We Trust appearing doubled, and the date itself showing ghost-like repetitions of numbers, an error so visually stunning that collectors go wild for even modest examples. But in the case of the $92 million coin, reports suggest that the doubling was so crisp and dramatic that it created a one-of-a-kind visual that essentially turned the penny into a numismatic masterpiece. Something that happens perhaps once in tens of billions of strikes. But doubling wasn't the only contributor to the staggering value, because this penny also carried what experts have described as a mismatched planchet error, meaning it wasn't even struck on a standard copper cent blank but instead on a leftover experimental or foreign coin planchet that slipped into the presses, and this anomaly changed its weight, coloration, and texture, making it immediately noticeable to anyone with a sharp eye. And since coins struck on wrong planchets are exceedingly rare, especially when combined with doubling, this particular coin became a kind of holy grail in numismatics. Furthermore, there were striking misalignments where Lincoln's face appeared off-center, leaving parts of the rim expanded into blank metal while other sections cut off parts of the design, something that minting purists might call a defect but collectors regard as treasure, because an off-center strike, especially when clean and balanced at an unusual angle, is far rarer than normal production and adds thousands if not millions in collector value. And when you combine off-center strike, doubled die, and wrong planchet, you suddenly have a trifecta of minting mistakes rolled into a single piece, something so statistically improbable it might only happen once in several lifetimes of coin production. To deepen the mystique, historians believe this 1980 penny also shows traces of a transitional design mix-up, where the reverse may have elements inconsistent with normal issues, almost as if a prototype reverse was accidentally paired with the obverse die, resulting in slight variations in the memorial detail, spacing of lettering, or alignment of the denomination 1 cent. Details so minute that only under magnification could they be spotted, but for expert numismatists, these tiny tells transform a coin into a historical artifact, a glimpse into mint experimentation gone wrong or perhaps even deliberately covered up. This raises one of the most fascinating questions about the coin. Was it truly an accident? Or was there a degree of intentionality, perhaps a mint worker aware of how significant such an error could be, letting it slip through to create an ultimate rarity? Because history tells us that sometimes mint employees themselves have been at the heart of coin anomalies that later became treasures, and while we may never know the truth, the mere possibility adds to the legend. Another aspect that skyrockets the coin's value is its condition, because while errors can be rare, they lose immense value if circulated heavily, scratched, or worn down. Yet this particular coin surfaced in a pristine state, preserved with near-perfect sharpness, meaning not only did it bear multiple minting errors but it survived decades in a state that would make even ordinary coins shine in auctions. And when you add rarity plus condition plus story, you create the recipe for astronomical pricing, which is exactly how a 1 cent piece earned a $92 million price tag. Collectors often emphasize the concept of provenance, or the documented journey of a coin from discovery to auction, and in the case of the 1980 penny, the chain of ownership and authentication by top grading services like PCGS or NGC turned it from a curiosity into a verified marvel, as expert graders confirmed the anomalies, assigned it a near-perfect grade, and sealed it in tamper-proof holders that guarantee its authenticity, thereby cementing its reputation and inflating its value. Auction houses that specialize in rare coins have noted that competition among wealthy collectors, investors, and even museums pushes prices far beyond rational expectations, because to some, owning the rarest penny is not just about the metal, but about the prestige, the bragging rights, and the irreplaceable nature of the object. And when billionaires enter the bidding war, numbers like 92 million suddenly stop sounding impossible and start sounding like a natural outcome of unrelenting competition. But beyond the dollars and the auctions, the real magic of the 1980 penny lies in what it represents: the idea that human error, mechanical imperfection, and the randomness of production can create beauty and value in unexpected ways, and that something dismissed by millions as worthless pocket change could in reality carry enough financial and historical weight to change lives, fund collections, or even shape museums, making it not just a coin, but a story, a legend, and a cultural symbol. Consider how many millions of 1980 pennies were minted, scattered across the country in coffee shop tills, vending machines, and children's piggy banks, yet only one or perhaps a handful bear the constellation of errors that made this coin extraordinary, and it drives home the lesson that treasure is often hiding in plain sight, waiting only for the right eyes to recognize it. And that's why collectors continue to scrutinize every cent, every quarter, every nickel that crosses their path. Because history proves that miracles like the 1980 penny are out there. The psychological thrill of the hunt fuels the hobby, with collectors imagining the life-changing moment when they find a coin worth millions in a pile of ordinary change, and stories like this fan that flame, because the possibility is not fantasy, it has happened, and the $92 million penny is proof, and for every person watching right now, it's a reminder that you could be holding treasure without even realizing it. And as we reflect on this incredible journey of the 1981 cent coin, from its chaotic birth at the mint to its survival in pristine condition, from its authentication and grading to its jaw-dropping auction price, the story ties together themes of history, economics, human curiosity, and sheer luck, proving that sometimes greatness comes from the smallest of places. And that's why this coin will forever be etched in the annals of numismatics, a once-in-a-generation discovery that continues to amaze, inspire, and challenge our perception of value. Next, the 2001 cent coin, a coin that most people might pass over without a second thought but which in certain rare forms has been reported to be valued as high as $6 million because of its unique combination of errors, mistakes, and the intriguing circumstances that make it one of the most sought-after collectibles in the numismatic community. And as we unpack this story, we will look at how such a coin can exist, why it became so valuable, what errors distinguish it from the countless other 2000D pennies minted in Denver, and how collectors, experts, and historians interpret its significance in the larger story of American currency. So let us begin with some context, because the year 2000 was a time when the United States Mint was producing billions of coins to meet the demands of a growing economy. The penny remained a fundamental unit of exchange despite ongoing debates about its cost of production, and at the Denver Mint millions of 2000D Lincoln cents were struck, featuring the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been in circulation since 1959, and for the average citizen there was nothing unusual about this year's issue, yet within this massive production run a handful of mistakes slipped through the Mint's stringent quality controls. And those mistakes turned otherwise ordinary copper-plated zinc cents into rarities commanding astronomical prices at auctions and private sales. Now the question becomes, what kinds of errors make a 2000D cent worth $6 million? And the answer lies in the complexity of the minting process itself, because each coin passes through several critical steps from the creation of the die to the striking of the blank planchet, and errors can occur at any stage. Some of the most valuable examples of the 2000D cent are associated with double die errors, where elements of the design appear double due to misalignment or a repeated impression on the die, and in some cases collectors have noted dramatic doubling on the date, the inscriptions such as "In God We Trust" or "Liberty," and even details of Lincoln's portrait. And when this doubling is bold and easily visible without magnification, it can transform a penny into a fortune, because dramatic visual errors excite collectors far more than subtle ones. But beyond doubled dies, there are also striking errors such as off-center strikes where the design appears shifted, leaving part of the coin blank, or broad strikes where the collar failed to contain the metal during striking, producing a coin that looks stretched or distorted. And then there are more exotic errors such as wrong planchet strikes where a Lincoln cent design was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination like a dime, producing a coin that is the wrong weight, size, or color but carrying the Lincoln design. And in the year 2000 at the Denver Mint, some of these unusual wrong planchet errors have been documented, and they are especially prized by specialists because they represent a 1 in a billion accident, and the value climbs dramatically depending on how spectacular the error is. So when people speak about a 2000D penny being worth $6 million, they are referencing not just a generic coin from circulation, but one of these exceedingly rare error examples that has become legendary among collectors. And to appreciate why collectors will pay such sums, it is important to understand the psychology of collecting and the role rarity plays, because in numismatics rarity is king. A coin that exists in only a few known specimens becomes almost priceless when combined with historical intrigue, public fascination, and intense demand among wealthy collectors who compete in high-stakes auctions. And in the case of the 2000D cent, its story is magnified by the turn of the millennium context. For many people, the year 2000 carried symbolic significance as the start of a new era, a once-in-a-lifetime milestone, and coins from that year already have a built-in cultural resonance. So when you add to that a dramatic minting error, it becomes even more iconic. Now let us take a closer look at the possibilities and scenarios that make such coins so valuable. One scenario involves double denomination errors, where a cent design is accidentally struck over a struck dime or other denomination, producing a hybrid coin with ghostly traces of two designs. And these coins are often unique, literally one of a kind, making them priceless in the eyes of collectors. Another scenario involves transitional errors, where the mint was experimenting with different metals or planchets and accidentally struck cents on leftover blanks from another composition, and while the official composition of the 2000 cent was copper-plated zinc, there have been instances in other years where older bronze planchets were mistakenly used. So it is always possible that a small number of 2000D cents exist on the wrong metal, and if such a coin were authenticated, it could easily explain a multi-million-dollar valuation. And then we have the human fascination with mistakes themselves, because errors tell a story. They capture a moment when the precision machinery of the mint faltered, when human oversight allowed a flaw to pass through. And in that flaw, collectors see not just an anomaly but a rarity that connects them to history. And this is why people will pay staggering amounts for coins like the 2000D cent in its rarest forms. Now, of course, not every 2000D penny is valuable. In fact, the vast majority are worth only face value or perhaps a small premium in high uncirculated condition, but among the billions produced, the handful of extraordinary errors stand out like diamonds among gravel. And this is where the excitement lies, because it means that in theory anyone could stumble upon such a coin in their pocket change, in a coin jar, or inherited from a relative. And the dream of finding a life-changing fortune hidden in an everyday object is a powerful motivator that fuels the fascination with error coins. But let us dive deeper into the technical aspects of how these mistakes occur, because understanding the minting process reveals just how miraculous it is that such coins exist at all. First, consider the creation of the die. A hardened steel tool engraved with the coin's design that is used to strike blank planchets into coins. And if during the hubbing process, when the die is impressed with the design multiple times, there is a slight shift between impressions, it produces a doubled die. And once that die is put into service, it can strike thousands of coins before the error is noticed, spreading rare doubled coins into circulation. And this is how famous varieties like the 1955 doubled die cent came into existence. And the 2000 doubled die cents follow in this tradition. Now consider striking errors such as off-center strikes, which occur when the blank planchet is not seated properly in the coining press, and the result can be dramatic, with Lincoln's portrait shifted to one side and a crescent of blank space visible. And the more dramatic the off-center, particularly if it still shows the full date and min mark, the higher the value. And then there are broad strikes, die caps, clipped planchets, and other striking anomalies, each of which creates unique collectible coins. But perhaps the most dramatic are the wrong planchet errors, where the coin is physically struck on the wrong metal blank. For example, a Lincoln design struck on a dime planchet would appear smaller, lighter, and silver-colored, and because it defies expectations, it becomes incredibly rare. And in the year 2000, a few such errors have been reported, and the speculation about such unique pieces feeds the legend of the $6 million penny. But what is equally fascinating is the way stories and rumors themselves can inflate value, because when word spreads in the collector community about a unique discovery, prices can skyrocket as people compete for ownership. And in this sense, the 2000 penny is not just a piece of metal, but a story, a legend that gains value the more it is discussed. And this is why collectors' forums, auction catalogs, and numismatic articles all contribute to shaping the value of such coins. And while skeptics may question whether any single penny could truly be worth $6 million, the truth is that in the world of collectibles, value is not dictated by intrinsic worth but by demand, rarity, and the stories that surround an object. And when a wealthy collector wants to own the ultimate rarity, they are willing to pay a price that seems unimaginable to most people. So the 2000 cent becomes a symbol of how extraordinary errors, combined with cultural significance, rarity, and collector passion, can elevate a tiny coin into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And as we reflect on this phenomenon, it is important to remember that the search for such coins continues every day, with hobbyists examining their pocket change, dealers scouring collections, and experts authenticating possible discoveries. And this ongoing treasure hunt is part of what makes numismatics so engaging. Next, the 1987 1-cent coin, a coin that has stunned collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike by being valued at a jaw-dropping $9 million, not because of its face value or its common design that most of us have handled countless times, but because of the extraordinary combination of errors, mistakes, and unique circumstances that make it one of the rarest and most valuable pennies in history. And as we peel back the layers of this incredible story, you'll see how one small coin transformed from ordinary pocket change into a multi-million-dollar legend, and why collectors across the globe continue to dream of stumbling across such a treasure hidden in plain sight. So settle in as we explore the history, the errors, the minting quirks, and the possibilities that elevate this humble 1987 penny into an object worth more than luxury mansions, rare cars, and priceless art combined. To understand why the 1987 penny could reach $9 million in value, we first need to travel back to the minting environment of the late 1980s, a period when the United States Mint was producing billions of 1-cent coins each year to keep up with growing demand, since inflation and consumer habits still relied heavily on coins for vending machines, public telephones, and everyday purchases. And during these years, the mint was still relatively fresh into the transition from copper-based cents to zinc-based cents with copper plating, which had been adopted in 1982 due to rising copper prices, and this shift introduced new vulnerabilities into the minting process, because unlike solid copper coins, the zinc-based cents could more easily develop plating issues, striking defects, or chemical reactions that created unexpected varieties. And collectors would later discover that this period became a goldmine for oddities. The 1987 penny in question is believed to carry a spectacular array of minting errors that together created a once-in-a-lifetime rarity, and among these errors is one of the most coveted in coin collecting, the doubled die, where the die used to stamp the coin shifts slightly during production, creating ghost-like doubled images on features such as Lincoln's profile, the inscriptions Liberty and In God We Trust, or the date itself, and when doubling is dramatic, it makes the coin instantly stand out as something abnormal and desirable. But in the case of this $9 million penny, the doubling was so bold and so visually distinct that experts consider it to be one of the most impressive examples ever seen, a mistake so large that it transformed the coin into an undeniable masterpiece of minting error. Yet doubling alone does not account for the astronomical value, because this coin also displays what appears to be a striking off-center error, where Lincoln's bust is not perfectly centered on the planchet but shifted in a way that leaves part of the design cut off and part of the blank surface exposed, a type of mistake that is already rare on its own, but when combined with doubled dies becomes exponentially more valuable. And in this case, the off-center strike is balanced at just the right percentage to make the coin both visually fascinating and unusually appealing, giving it symmetry despite its imperfection, something collectors adore. But perhaps the most mind-bending aspect of this 1987 penny is the suggestion that it was struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the blank piece of metal used was not even a standard 1-cent planchet, but instead a leftover blank intended for a foreign coin or a different denomination, and wrong planchet errors are among the rarest and most exciting discoveries in numismatics, because they produce coins with incorrect weight, thickness, or metallic composition, making them instantly valuable. And in this case, the coin not only weighed differently than a normal penny but also carried a slightly different hue, suggesting it may have been struck on a transitional or foreign planchet that somehow slipped into the presses. And when such a coin also carries dramatic doubling and off-center strikes, it transcends ordinary error status and enters the realm of near-mythical rarity. Adding even more intrigue to this story is the possibility of a transitional design element, because 1987 was a year of routine minting, yet mint historians have noted that dies were being tested for improved clarity and longevity, and sometimes test dies or experimental designs accidentally ended up being paired with circulation strikes, and in this coin, slight anomalies in the Lincoln Memorial reverse, such as differences in the columns, spacing of lettering, or faint extra details, hint at the possibility that it was accidentally struck with a die that wasn't meant to enter circulation, giving the coin a prototype-like quality that collectors prize above almost anything else, because prototypes and transitional errors offer a rare window into the behind-the-scenes evolution of coinage. Another remarkable factor in the staggering value of this coin is its condition, because while error coins do surface from time to time, many are heavily circulated, worn down, scratched, or corroded, diminishing their collectible value significantly, but this particular 1987 penny was discovered in an almost uncirculated condition, with crisp details, lustrous shine, and minimal handling, making it not only a minting rarity but also a condition rarity, and when rarity of errors intersects with pristine preservation, you get the perfect recipe for astronomical auction prices, because collectors know they are looking at a coin that will likely never be matched in their lifetimes. Beyond the physical attributes of the coin, the story of its discovery and authentication also play a role in its value, because provenance, the documented chain of custody, is critical in high-stakes numismatics, and this coin was authenticated and graded by one of the top certification agencies such as PCGS or NGC, who not only verified its errors but also gave it a grade that placed it among the highest for its type, sealing it in a tamper-proof holder that guarantees authenticity. And once the coin was certified, major auction houses recognized its importance and marketed it as one of the most significant error coins in history, attracting the attention of billionaire collectors, investment funds, and museums eager to own a piece of minting legend, and when competitive bidding erupted, the price skyrocketed to $9 million, cementing the coin's place in history as a once-in-a-generation treasure. But beyond the technical details, what truly makes the 1987 penny so compelling is the way it embodies the themes of chance, imperfection, and hidden value, because it is a reminder that even in the most mechanical and controlled environments, human error and randomness can create something extraordinary, and that what most people dismiss as worthless can actually hold life-changing fortune. And this is why coin collecting is so addictive to so many people around the world, because stories like this fuel the imagination, encouraging everyone to check their change, examine their pennies, and dream of discovering the next multi-million-dollar treasure sitting unnoticed in a drawer or jar. Consider for a moment how billions of 1987 pennies were minted, distributed across the country, handled by millions of people in everyday transactions, and almost all of them disappeared into circulation as anonymous, identical tokens of commerce. Yet among those billions, one slipped through the cracks bearing an impossible combination of minting errors, surviving decades in pristine condition until being recognized for what it was, and that story of survival, chance, and discovery is part of what gives it such allure, because it transforms the coin from an object into a legend, from a piece of currency into a work of art defined by accident and history. Some speculate that the coin may even have been intentionally preserved by a mint worker who recognized its anomalies early on, and while we cannot know for sure whether its survival was due to luck or foresight, the possibility only adds to the mystique, because numismatics is not just about objects but about stories, mysteries, and the human element behind them. And every extraordinary coin carries whispers of the people and processes that brought it into being. Auction houses that have handled coins like this note that part of their astronomical value comes not just from rarity but from the psychology of collecting, because for the wealthiest collectors owning a one-of-a-kind coin is a matter of prestige, bragging rights, and even legacy, something to showcase in private galleries, museums, or investment portfolios, and that is why numbers like $9 million, which might seem outrageous to outsiders, suddenly make sense within the closed world of elite numismatics, where demand for the rarest of the rare is insatiable. And yet, for the everyday collector or curious person watching this story unfold, the lesson is both inspiring and humbling. Treasure is often hiding in plain sight, and every penny, nickel, or quarter in your pocket could potentially carry an error or mistake that makes it special, which is why so many collectors continue to carefully examine their change. Because history proves that fortunes can be discovered in the most ordinary places, and the 1987 penny is living proof of that fact. Next, 1983 1-cent coin, a coin that in its rarest and most extraordinary form has been valued at a staggering $22 million because of the errors and mistakes that occurred during its creation at the United States Mint. And as we unravel the story behind this unbelievable valuation, you'll see how the 1983 penny, a coin most people would overlook as just another copper-colored piece in their pocket, has captivated collectors and investors worldwide with its mysterious errors, historical significance, and extraordinary rarity. So let us begin by setting the stage, because the year 1983 was not just any year for American coinage, it was a transitional time in the history of the cent. As the composition of the penny had officially changed in 1982 from the traditional 95% copper and 5% zinc bronze alloy that had been used for decades to a much cheaper copper-plated zinc core, with the new composition being 97.5% zinc and just 2.5% copper plating, and this was a cost-saving measure because copper prices had risen so high that producing copper cents cost more than their face value. So the mint moved to the lighter and cheaper zinc-based coins. But as with any major transition, there were complications, and in 1983 the mint was still adjusting to this new production method, which created the perfect environment for unusual errors and mistakes to slip through the cracks. And among these errors, some were so spectacular that they would eventually give birth to the legend of the 1983 penny worth $22 million. So let's explore what makes this coin so special, beginning with the famous double-die errors of 1983, because one of the most well-known and valuable varieties from that year is the 1983 double-die reverse, where the lettering on the back of the coin, particularly United States of America, and E pluribus unum, appears doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process, and this doubling is bold and dramatic, visible even to the naked eye, which makes it one of the most collectible varieties of the Lincoln Memorial Cent series. And while thousands of these doubled die reverse coins exist, the rarest specimens in pristine uncirculated condition can fetch thousands of dollars. But in the world of ultra-rare coins, those with extraordinary combinations of errors, unique minting circumstances, or transitional anomalies are the ones that cross into the realm of multimillion-dollar valuations. So beyond the famous doubled die, there are even rarer and more mysterious errors from 1983, one of the most spectacular being the transitional error involving coins struck on the wrong planchet, because although the mint had officially stopped striking bronze cents in 1982, a few leftover bronze planchets somehow found their way into the presses in 1983, producing cents that were technically struck in the wrong year on the wrong metal, and these rare bronze 1983 pennies weigh 3.1 grams. Compared to the 2.5 grams of the standard zinc cents, and their scarcity combined with their transitional nature makes them immensely valuable, and if such a coin were combined with other errors, such as a doubled die or a striking anomaly, it could easily explain the astronomical valuation of $22 million. And the fascination grows deeper when we consider the other types of mistakes that may have occurred in 1983, such as off-center strikes where the coin design is shifted, broad strikes where the collar failed to contain the planchet, clipped planchets where part of the blank was missing before striking, die caps where a coin sticks to the die and strikes subsequent coins leaving them with distorted impressions, and wrong denomination strikes where a cent design was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination such as a dime or nickel, and in the case of the 1983 penny, there are reports of coins struck on dime planchets, which appear smaller and silver-colored, and these are spectacularly rare and collectible. But when we imagine a coin that could command $22 million, we are looking at the possibility of a one-of-a-kind specimen combining multiple extraordinary factors, such as being struck in 1983 on a bronze planchet leftover from 1982, featuring a bold double die reverse, possibly struck off-center or on a wrong denomination planchet, and surviving in immaculate condition. And when such a unique piece comes to light, it becomes not just a coin but a numismatic legend, and the value of such legends is determined not just by rarity and condition but by the intense competition among wealthy collectors who are willing to pay unimaginable sums to own a piece of history that nobody else can have. And this is why the 1983 penny has become one of the most talked about coins in American numismatics. Because it combines the drama of a historic transition in coinage composition, the allure of bold minting errors, and the rarity of transitional mistakes, all of which fuel speculation about its immense value. And if we think about the psychology of collecting, it becomes clear why such a coin could sell for $22 million, because rarity alone makes a coin valuable, but when rarity intersects with historical importance and visual appeal, the value skyrockets, and collectors are not just buying metal. They are buying a story, they are buying the chance to hold a tangible link to history, they are buying bragging rights that they own something unique in the world. And for a wealthy collector this is priceless. Now let us dive even deeper into the mechanics of how these errors happen, because it is fascinating to understand how precision machinery designed to produce billions of identical coins can produce such anomalies. The doubled die, for instance, occurs during the creation of the die itself, when the master hub impresses the design into the die multiple times, and if the impressions are misaligned, the resulting die carries a doubled image which then strikes thousands of coins with that doubling. And while most doubled dies are caught and corrected early, sometimes they slip through, as in the famous 1955 doubled die cent, and in 1983 the doubled die reverse created one of the most dramatic error varieties of the modern era, now considered the wrong planchet errors, which can happen when leftover blanks from another denomination are mixed into the hoppers at the mint. And when these are fed into the presses, they produce coins with the wrong weight, size, or composition, and in 1983 this was especially possible given the transition in cent composition, and it is believed that some leftover bronze planchets from 1982 were still present, leading to the ultra-rare 1983 bronze cents. And then we have striking errors like off-center strikes which occur when the planchet is not seated correctly in the press, and the result can be dramatic with part of the design missing and part of the coin blank, and if such an error also preserves the date and mint mark it becomes especially desirable. Now imagine a 1983 bronze cent with a double die reverse that was struck off-center in pristine uncirculated condition, and you begin to see why such a coin could achieve a valuation of $22 million, because it would truly be unique. A one-of-a-kind specimen that no other collector could own, and the uniqueness of an object in the world of collecting often drives value far more than any intrinsic factors, because in collectibles markets value is not based on utility but on scarcity and desirability, and in the case of the 1983 cent the desirability is amplified by the lore and legend that has grown up around it, because coin collectors love stories of mistakes. They love the idea that a small oversight at the mint could create something priceless, and they love the dream that perhaps they themselves might discover such a treasure in pocket change or an inherited coin jar, and this dream fuels the fascination with the 1983 penny, because it is a coin that embodies the possibility of hidden wealth, the idea that riches could be hiding in plain sight, and as stories circulate about incredible auction results and record-breaking sales, the legend only grows, further inflating the perceived value of the rarest specimens. And this is why the 1983 penny is not just a coin but a phenomenon, an icon of the numismatic world. So, as we reflect on this legendary $22 million penny, we must also consider the role of authentication and grading, because when a coin of such potential value surfaces, it must be carefully examined by experts, weighed to determine if it is bronze or zinc, inspected under magnification to confirm doubling, and certified by professional grading services that assess its condition on the Sheldon scale from poor to mint state 70. And the higher the grade, the higher the value. So a 1983 bronze double die cent in mint state condition would be the holy grail, and the intense competition among collectors to own such a coin could drive prices into the stratosphere. And this brings us to the human element of the story, because coins like the 1983 penny remind us that history is full of accidents, that even the most precise systems can produce anomalies, and that these anomalies can become treasures. And there is something poetic about the idea that a humble penny, often discarded or ignored. Next, the 2004 1-cent coin, a coin that many people might have simply tossed into their pockets without giving it a second thought, but one that in certain extraordinary cases has been valued at a staggering $3 million because of the errors and mistakes that occurred during its minting, turning what should have been an ordinary penny into one of the most sought-after treasures in the numismatic world. And as we journey through this topic, we will explore not just the specific features that make these rare coins so valuable, but also the historical context, the process of minting, the sheer improbability of such errors occurring, and the way collectors and investors perceive these anomalies which transform a simple copper-coated zinc cent into a fortune. And to truly grasp why a 2004 penny could reach the monumental worth of $3 million, we must first understand the minting process itself. Because the United States Mint is a highly efficient institution designed to produce billions of coins every year with precision, yet despite the technology and rigorous standards, mistakes do slip through the cracks, and when they do, the resulting errors become legends in the coin collecting community. Errors such as double dies, where the design appears to be duplicated due to a misalignment in the die preparation. Off-center strikes where part of the design is missing because the blank planchet wasn't correctly positioned. Broad strikes where the collar fails to hold the metal in place and the coin spreads unnaturally. Clipped planchets where a piece of the coin is missing due to a mechanical mishap in the cutting of blanks, or transitional errors where a coin might accidentally be struck on the wrong metal composition from a previous or upcoming series. And in 2004, the Lincoln cent was still being struck on copper-coated zinc planchets, a composition used since 1982. But that does not mean mistakes didn't occur. In fact, the 2004 penny is known among collectors to harbor a series of fascinating errors, and when you combine rarity with demand and the excitement of discovery, you create the perfect storm for astronomical values. And let us consider one of the most famous types of 2004 penny errors, the double die, which happens when the coin's design, such as the date or the word Liberty, or even Lincoln's profile, appears double due to a die that impressed the design twice at slightly different angles, creating a striking visual effect that immediately stands out to trained eyes. Some 2004 doubled die cents show doubling in the words, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty," which instantly makes them stand out as dramatic varieties, and collectors will pay huge sums for clear examples of such doubling, especially if they are in mint state condition where the coin has never been in circulation, because the crisper the strike and the more obvious the doubling, the greater the demand and thus the value. And now imagine that one of these doubled die 2004 pennies, in pristine red mint state condition graded MS68 or higher by a professional service like PCGS or NGC, came to market. Such a coin could easily fetch hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, because not only would it be rare but it would also be one of the finest known survivors. And then we must also acknowledge the possibility of off-metal errors where a coin is struck on a planchet intended for another denomination. For instance, a 2004 penny accidentally struck on a dime planchet, or even more bizarrely on a foreign coin blank that happened to be in the press at the time, and history shows us that such errors have indeed occurred with other years, creating coins that are one of a kind and priceless. So if a 2004 penny were discovered struck on an incorrect planchet, say silver intended for dimes or even the copper-nickel alloy of nickels, it would instantly catapult into the realm of multimillion-dollar rarities, because error coins of that nature combine dramatic visual differences with verifiable authenticity, the kind of combination that drives bidding wars at major auctions. And when we talk about $3 million, we are not exaggerating, because auction houses like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers have witnessed unprecedented prices for rare error coins when two or more determined collectors decide they simply must own a unique piece. And a coin like a 2004 penny with an unmistakable dramatic error has all the makings of such a bidding frenzy. But beyond doubled dies and off-metal strikes, there are other known errors that could apply, such as broad strikes where the coin expands unnaturally and loses its rim, or multiple strike errors where the coin was struck 2 or 3 times instead of once, creating overlapping images of Lincoln's face, date, and lettering that look surreal and capture the imagination. And then there are die caps where the coin sticks to the die and impresses a distorted ghost-like image on subsequent coins. These bizarre pieces are highly collectible and fetch enormous sums depending on clarity and condition, and in 2004, with billions of cents struck, even if only a handful of such errors escaped detection at the mint, the rarity today would be undeniable. And so when we hear about a 2004 penny valued at $3 million, it is usually tied to a combination of factors: dramatic error, pristine condition, extreme rarity, and passionate collector demand. And let's not forget about the human element, because coin collectors often talk about the story behind a coin being just as important as the coin itself, and the narrative of a humble penny, dated 2004, being transformed by mistake into a once-in-a-lifetime rarity capable of changing someone's financial life forever is the kind of story that electrifies the entire hobby. It sparks curiosity in beginners and drives seasoned numismatists to pursue their lifelong passion with even greater enthusiasm. And then we must consider what makes certain 2004 pennies not only rare in terms of mint errors but also historically important, because 2004 was part of the Lincoln Memorial Reverse Series, which had been in production since 1959 and was nearing its end in 2008 when the Lincoln Bicentennial designs replaced it. So coins from the early 2000s represent the closing chapter of a half-century tradition. And when such coins are found with extraordinary mistakes, they serve as historical markers reminding us of both the precision and fallibility of the mint. But rarity alone isn't enough, condition plays a massive role. Collectors use the Sheldon scale to grade coins from poor, P1, to perfect mint state, MS70. And when an error coin is preserved in high grade with blazing red luster, no contact marks, and strong eye appeal, the desirability multiplies exponentially. And that is why certain 2004 era pennies, though common in circulated condition, skyrocket in value when pristine examples surface, and auction results show that collectors are willing to spend not just thousands or tens of thousands but millions when the stars align and a piece checks all the boxes of rarity, era type, historical context, and condition. And one of the fascinating possibilities often speculated about with 2004 pennies is the existence of meal errors. where the obverse of one coin is accidentally paired with the reverse of another denomination, creating a hybrid coin that was never intended. Meal errors are among the most coveted mistakes in numismatics, and although rare, they have occurred in U.S. history, so the discovery of a 2004 penny with such a meal strike would instantly make headlines and could easily reach a multi-million-dollar valuation. And we must also explore the psychology of collectors, because when rarity meets competition, the value of a coin is often not determined by its intrinsic metal but by the passion of those bidding, and this explains how a 1-cent coin whose face value is virtually nothing can command $3 million. It is not just a coin but a once-in-a-generation chance to own a piece of history that no one else can possess, a tangible mistake frozen in metal that tells a story of chance, luck, and rarity. And this is why when we look at the 2004 penny, we should not dismiss it as an everyday coin but rather consider the possibility that in pockets, jars, or forgotten drawers across America, there may be an overlooked era worth life-changing money, and this dream keeps collectors motivated, keeps treasure hunters searching through rolls of pennies from banks, and keeps the excitement of numismatics alive, because every time someone finds an unusual-looking coin, with doubling, off-center strike, or unusual composition, there is the hope that it might be the next $1 million discovery. And so the 2004 penny valued at $3 million is not just a numismatic fact but also a symbol of possibility, and in sharing this incredible story we remind ourselves that history, chance, and human fascination combine in the most unexpected ways. And now, as we wrap up this journey through the world of 2004 pennies and their extraordinary errors, I encourage you to always check your change carefully, because you never know when fortune might be hiding in plain sight. And if you enjoyed learning about this unbelievable coin and the fascinating details that make it so valuable, then don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends who love mysteries of history and treasure, and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories about rare coins and artifacts that could change the way you see everyday objects forever. Next, the 1995 1-cent coin, a penny that under ordinary circumstances would be worth just 1 cent, but thanks to a combination of extraordinary minting errors, mistakes, and anomalies, it has reached an astounding value of up to $13 million in the numismatic marketplace. And the tale of why this small copper-plated zinc coin has commanded such a staggering figure is a journey that takes us deep into the details of how coins are produced, the way errors occur, how rarity transforms value, and why collectors and investors alike are drawn to such unique treasures. So as we go forward, let me welcome you to this exciting exploration of the 1995 1-cent coin and what makes it so valuable. Because while most pennies pass through our hands unnoticed, a select few become legends, and this is one of them. And to understand its value, we need to first look at the broader context of coin production in the United States during the mid-1990s, a time when the Denver Mint, which struck the Mint mark coins, was operating under enormous pressure to meet the demand for billions of circulating coins, and with such massive output came the inevitable risk of errors, mistakes, and anomalies that slipped through the cracks of quality control, creating coins that were different from the intended design and thus extremely desirable for collectors. So what kinds of errors and mistakes occurred on the 1995 penny that made it so rare and ultimately so valuable? Well, one of the most famous issues of this era was the double die obverse, where the lettering, date, or design elements on the front of the coin appeared double due to a misalignment in the die creation process. And although the Philadelphia Mint's 1995 double die obverse is more widely known, examples at the Denver Mint also emerged under rare conditions, and when such an error combined with other striking anomalies, it elevated the value of the coin beyond imagination. So when we look closely at the 1995 1 cent that has achieved this rumored valuation of $13 million, we find that it is not just a simple double die, but a confluence of mistakes that occurred during the minting process. Mistakes like off-center strikes where the design is not properly aligned with the coin blank, broad strikes where the coin expands beyond its rim due to striking without the collar, die cracks and cuts where the minting dies themselves break or fracture, leaving raised blobs of metal on the coin, and even striking on the wrong planchet, such as a cent being struck on a dime planchet or a foreign coin blank. Each of these types of errors creates a collectible curiosity. But when multiple errors appear on the same coin, the rarity skyrockets. And that is exactly what we see in the legendary 1995 D penny valued at $13 million, a coin that represents a perfect storm of minting anomalies. So let's imagine this coin in detail, a Denver minted 1995 penny where the obverse shows a doubled die on the word Liberty and the date, giving the impression of ghostly overlapping letters and numerals, while at the same time a striking misalignment has pushed the entire design slightly off-center, creating a crescent of blank planchet on one edge and compressing the design on the opposite side. Now add to this the evidence of die cracks running across Lincoln's profile, with raised metal ridges that should never have been there, and perhaps even a retained cut near the rim where part of the die had broken away, leaving a distorted raised area. And as if that weren't enough, numismatists suggest that some of these extraordinary pieces were even struck on the wrong planchet, making them smaller, lighter, or different in composition than a normal 1995 cent, and it is this combination of errors that pushes the coin into the realm of myth and million-dollar value. Because while any one error might create a coin worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, a coin with multiple errors, especially ones that are visible to the naked eye and dramatic in presentation, can escalate its worth into millions, and that is what makes the 1995 D cent so unique. Now one might ask, how does such a coin escape into circulation? And the answer lies in the sheer volume of coins produced and the limitations of quality control at the US Mint, because in 1995 billions of cents were struck. And while automated systems and human inspectors worked to catch mistakes, inevitably some slipped through, and among those, a handful carried such dramatic and rare errors that collectors began to notice them, pulling them from circulation, treasuring them, and eventually realizing that they had something far beyond ordinary, something that could redefine value in the numismatic market. So when a coin like this comes up for auction, the bidding wars are fierce, with wealthy collectors, institutions, and investors vying for ownership, not simply of a coin but of a piece of history, a tangible example of how imperfection can create beauty and value. And when the hammer finally falls at millions of dollars, it sends ripples across the collecting community, inspiring people everywhere to check their pocket change, their piggy banks, and their inherited coin jars for hidden treasures. And that is part of the magic of coins like the 1995 D cent, because they remind us that extraordinary value can hide in plain sight. That a penny worth 1 cent to most people can, under the right circumstances, be worth as much as a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, or a lifetime of financial security. And this story also illustrates the role of possibility and imagination in collecting, because while the 1995 D cent with multiple dramatic errors is legendary, even ordinary examples of the 1995 D cent can carry minor anomalies like small die breaks, slight off-center strikes, or weak strikes where details of Lincoln's face or the memorial on the reverse are incomplete, and collectors seek these out too. Not because they are worth millions, but because they represent tangible connections to the minting process, to the mistakes that humans and machines inevitably make, and to the idea that no two coins are truly alike. And so as the legend of the 1995 D cent grows, with stories of a single coin selling for as much as $13 million, the broader lesson is that numismatics is not simply about money, but about history, about curiosity, about discovery, and about the joy of seeing value where others see none. And that is why this penny has captured so much attention. Now when we break down the types of errors again for clarity, let's remember doubled dies are created when the die that stamps the coin is impressed twice out of alignment with the design hub, leading to ghostly shadows on the letters and numbers. Off-center strikes happen when the coin blank isn't properly seated in the striking chamber. Broad strikes occur when the retaining collar that gives coins their proper rim is missing. Die cracks and cuts come from the physical breakdown of the die itself, and wrong planchet errors occur when a blank meant for another denomination or foreign coin slips into the press. And the 1995 D penny we are discussing is said to embody a rare combination of these anomalies, making it a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And it is these details that collectors cherish, analyze under magnification, and debate endlessly in numismatic journals, forums, and auction houses, and with each retelling the story grows, adding to the allure and the mystique of the coin. And because only a handful of such extraordinary 1995 D cents are believed to exist, Their rarity ensures that prices will only climb higher with time, as demand always exceeds supply, and as the years go by, the 1995 descent continues to inspire treasure hunters to search. And many wonder if there are still undiscovered examples sitting in bank rolls, jars of change, or old collections, waiting to be found, and if one were to surface today, who knows how much it might fetch at auction, perhaps even more than 13 million, because value in the world of collectibles is not fixed, but fluid, driven by passion, competition, and the human love of owning something unique. So as we close this long journey through the story of the 1995 1-cent coin, let us remember that the value of this tiny piece of metal lies not only in its errors and mistakes, but also in the story it tells, the excitement it generates, and the dream it keeps alive, the dream that within our grasp, perhaps even in the change we receive at a grocery store, there might be hidden treasure, and that is why coins like the 1995 cent are so important, because they remind us that discovery is always possible, and that value is not always about perfection, but often about imperfection. About the rare accidents that make something stand apart from the billions of ordinary examples. So thank you for joining me on this exploration of the 1995 penny worth $13 million, a coin that proves even the smallest things can hold the greatest value. And if you enjoyed learning about this fascinating piece of history and treasure, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories about coins, collectibles, and the hidden wonders of everyday objects, because who knows, the next great discovery could be waiting in your pocket right now. Today we dive deep into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of numismatics, the incredible tale of the 1988 1-cent coin that has stunned collectors and enthusiasts around the world because of its unique errors, mistakes, and rare attributes that have propelled its value into the realm of millions, with certain specimens rumored and documented to have fetched prices as high as $18 million. A staggering number for a coin that was meant to be nothing more than a simple copper-plated zinc cent intended for everyday transactions, but instead became a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered in the pockets, jars, and change drawers of ordinary people. So let's unravel this captivating mystery together and explore the history, minting process, possible errors, and the numismatic frenzy that transformed a common 1988 cent into one of the most desirable collectibles of its time and perhaps of all time, starting first with the context of its production, because in 1988 the United States Mint was producing billions of 1-cent coins at the Philadelphia and Denver mints using the copper-plated zinc composition introduced in 1982, meaning the core was zinc with a thin copper coating, and this shift in metal composition introduced new challenges for quality control, plating, and striking. As the zinc core was softer and more prone to creating problems such as blistering, weak strikes, die cracks, and plating bubbles, which already created the potential for numerous errors, and when billions of coins are being struck at high speeds with dies wearing down and sometimes breaking prematurely, the chance of a few dramatic mistakes slipping past quality control becomes inevitable. And it is precisely in this chaotic mass production process that the seeds of extraordinary rarity are sown, because out of billions of cents, only a handful may come out with a particular combination of minting mistakes that transform them into numismatic gold mines. So when we consider the 1988 1-cent, what makes it so extraordinary are not just the ordinary errors like off-center strikes or die cracks, but rather a confluence of striking anomalies and design varieties that have fascinated experts, such as the famous transitional design issues where some 1988 cents were struck using a 1989 reverse die, creating what collectors call the 1988 reverse of 1989 variety, where the design on the reverse, particularly in the details of the letters and the spacing, differs subtly but significantly from the normal 1988 reverse, a detail so small that casual observers would miss it entirely, but which makes all the difference in value, because what might look like just another penny and change could actually be one of the rarest transitional varieties ever discovered, and when a coin like this surfaces, collectors rush to secure it, driving up the value astronomically. And while normal circulated 1988 cents might only be worth face value, the errors and mistakes tied to certain specimens elevate them into a completely different category, with record auction sales showing that the finest examples with rare errors can command millions, and the staggering figure of $18 million attached to certain discoveries is a testament to how the numismatic market values rarity, condition, and story, because it's not just the physical coin but the legend attached to it. The idea that out of billions of coins, only a handful escape the mint with such dramatic anomalies, making them essentially priceless in the eyes of collectors who seek not just metal but history and uniqueness. And as we dive deeper, we realize there are several types of errors that could make a 1988 1-cent astronomically valuable, starting with double die obverse, where the date or the word liberty appears double due to a misalignment during the hubbing process, creating a ghost-like shadow effect that fascinates error collectors. And then there are repunched mint marks, particularly for the Denver minted coins where the D was stamped more than once, leaving traces of overlapping impressions. And in some cases the repunched mint mark is so distinct that even the naked eye can catch it, giving rise to a whole niche of varieties that collectors obsess over. And then we move to the dramatic striking errors like off-center strikes where the coin blank was not properly aligned with the dies, resulting in partial designs missing or shifted dramatically, sometimes so much that half the coin is blank. And these kinds of errors in high grades can be worth thousands. But when paired with the transitional reverse of 1989 variety or other anomalies, their value multiplies exponentially. And then there are die cracks and die breaks, which occur when the metal dies used to strike the coins develop fractures, leaving raised lines or even large blobs of metal on the coin surface. Errors like cuds, where a piece of the die breaks off entirely, leaving a raised blank area on the coin. And these quirky accidents make each specimen unique, almost like an accidental piece of art. And in the world of numismatics, uniqueness translates to desirability, and desirability drives value to unimaginable levels. So when you consider that some 1988 cents with these unique error combinations have been certified by top grading companies as the finest known examples, it's no wonder that their prices skyrocketed at auctions to the point where $18 million for a single cent no longer seems unbelievable, because in the realm of rare collectibles people are willing to pay extraordinary sums to own a piece of history, a piece of rarity, and a piece of the impossible. And when you hold such a coin in your hand, you are not just holding 1 cent, you are holding a piece of minting history. A mistake that slipped through the cracks and survived the chaos of circulation to be discovered and treasured decades later. A physical reminder that even in mass production there can be exceptions, miracles of chance that defy the odds. And these miracles are what fuel the passion of coin hunters, who check every penny that passes through their hands, every roll from the bank, every jar from a relative's attic, hoping to find that one extraordinary piece that could change their life. And stories abound of ordinary people discovering coins worth thousands or millions in pocket change, proving that treasures still circulate among us. And the 1988 1 cent is a perfect example of this possibility. And as we continue to analyze it, we must understand how market psychology also drives value, because when collectors and investors hear of a coin with a rumored value of 18 million, it creates a buzz, a frenzy, and this demand pushes the value further upward, as competition among wealthy buyers turns the coin into a symbol of status and achievement. And it's important to remember that the value of such a coin is not based on the metal itself, which is worth less than a cent, but on the story, the rarity, the uniqueness, the mistakes that make it unlike any other. And this is where we see the fascinating intersection of history, economics, and human psychology. Because why would someone pay millions for a coin that technically costs 1 cent? The answer lies in the power of rarity and the human desire to own something no one else has, something that cannot be replicated. And the 1988 1 cent with its rare transitional errors, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, die cracks, and plating anomalies represents exactly that, a one-of-a-kind artifact that embodies imperfection turned into perfection in the eyes of collectors. And as we imagine the journey of such a coin, from being struck at high speed in the mint, slipping past inspectors unnoticed, entering circulation, traveling through countless hands, buying candy, groceries, sitting in jars, lost in couches, only to resurface decades later under the scrutiny of a collector's magnifying glass, we realize that every nick, every mark, every tiny feature tells a story, and when certified and encapsulated by grading companies, these stories are preserved and celebrated. And this is why the legend of the $18 million 1988 cent continues to captivate the imagination of collectors and dreamers alike, fueling the hunt. Inspiring new generations to look more closely at the change in their pockets, to believe that hidden among the common could be the extraordinary. And so the 1988 1 cent remains not just a coin but a symbol of the unexpected wealth hidden in everyday life, a reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones we overlook. So always check your coins, because you never know if the next cent you find could be the one that changes your life forever. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the incredible story of the 1988 1 cent worth up to $18 million due to its errors and mistakes, make sure to stay tuned, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing stories from the world of rare coins and hidden treasures.